Hello, everybody. Good evening. It's Thursday evening. It's the Smart Connector Group, and we're going live on the Connection Central Strand with Matt Siddell. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Jane. Thanks for inviting me. I'm nervous.
Yeah. Oh, no, nothing to be nervous about. It's great to have you here. So for anybody that doesn't know Matt, I'm going to let him introduce himself in a minute and tell you what he's been up to. But we've had some great chats beforehand. We spoke earlier on today, and Matt, you had to escape very quickly, didn't you? Because there was an incident, wasn't there?
There was a bit of an incident, but I was escaping from our phone call because I had to get outside because all these police were there.
Police.
I wasn't escaping from the police.
Yes. Okay. So you have to watch until the end of the interview to find out what Matt did and why he was escaping from the police this morning.
I wasn't escaping from the police. I just had to hang up on you.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, to find out what happened, we will tell you at the end of the interview. So you have to watch all the way through, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
To wait to the end.
All right then. So I'll do a little introduction, and then Matt, I'll hand it over to you, and we can talk a little bit more. So Matt's a serial entrepreneur, and he's also a renowned property developer. And this is how I met him, because you were actually running one of the flagship, well, I would say the flagship Progressive Property Network event a few years ago called PPN Knightsbridge, weren't you, Matt?
Yep. So I started Knightsbridge in 2015.
Yes.
And the reason I did it was because there was a large network of people there, and I wanted to plug into that network so I could meet people like you, which is how I met you.
Yes.
But I didn't really go the traditional route. So I hadn't done like all progressives training and all the rest of it, but I just saw that they wanted hosts. And I thought if I could have a piece of London, that I could, and if I could have some autonomy and do it the way that I want to do it, a bit of flexibility, then that could be really good. And I approached them and said, I reckon I could do a London event for you guys, and it could be really good. So I actually bought the franchise for the West London piece of what they were doing, and it was really good because they let me.
Yeah, it absolutely was, because I think yours was the only progressive property event at the time that wasn't about selling from the stage. It was all about creating a quality experience for the people that came.
Yeah.
And because of that, it just took off like a rocket.
I banned people from selling courses from the stage because I thought it was not quite cool.
Yeah, I know. I don't know, that whole selling from the stage thing, it was like really, really big for a while. And I think it was, it's very manipulative. It's what I call scarcity or manipulation marketing. And I'm not a big fan of it myself. And I just think if you create value for people, then you actually build a relationship. You don't put them under pressure, and they're more likely to become your customer for life. That's my view anyway. And I think
it's a bit like, once you know how the magic trick works, the magic trick doesn't really work anymore. So
that's right. Yeah.
What else have you got up your sleeve?
Exactly. So since then, Matt, you've also started up the Premier Property Development Club. I don't know if you describe it that way, but
if I do, I think I'd sound a bit big-headed, but some people say it's the best of what it does. I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay. And of course, you are a developer yourself with your property development business, Opulen, that I believe specializes in, is it sort of exciting listed buildings as opposed to...
Well, I mean, I started Opulen in 2000 and at the end of 2011, 2012. Yes. And Opulen started buying houses in Reading. I bought lots of houses in Reading, and that did really well because price in Reading shot up after I finished the portfolio. And I did some projects in London, but actually I bought a lot of property in 2016 because of the Brexit vote.
Yes.
And that didn't really go very well for me because we were supposed to vote and stay in the EU, but we voted to leave the EU. And the £12 million worth of property that I believed I was going to develop never materialized. So that was a big challenge for me. And then I started the club because I didn't want to be buying property in 2017. I didn't believe in it.
Yeah.
I was worried about Brexit. I was worried about the economy. So I started Candor, which is the club for business owners whether like investors or developers or people that own businesses, as long as they're actively involved in deals between 1 million upwards, then those are the people we work with through the club. But you're right. I've done a bunch of things, and if I rattle them all off, it will just confuse everyone.
Serial entrepreneur. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Matt, just tell us about your latest initiative, because that's very exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the story behind that's quite interesting, because around the middle of last year, I was thinking, right, we've got all these people in this club who are really good at what they do, whether they're developing property or running some other sort of property business. And I don't make lots of money out of the club. We don't charge lots and lots of money to be a member of the club. It makes a reasonable profit. We give a large piece to charity. But I wanted to do something with all that knowledge and expertise, and I started looking around at what skills I could learn so I could do something with it. So since about August last year, I've been discreetly working in the background saying, like, I think 2020 is going to be the year when everything goes online. And I didn't realize there was going to be a global pandemic and that it was going to happen quite as quickly as that. But for the last 6 months or longer, I've been working on building an online property education business that doesn't necessarily have to teach everyone how to make £1 million in 12 months and buy a Ferrari and then run your boss over in it and give him a 2-finger salute, because
about that, really, is it?
I think everyone who's got a good job or a healthy business should be doing something with property, because that's where you just make loads of money. When I fixed up my house, we made £700,000 or £800,000 profit, and that was untaxed because it was our home. And Reading went up by £1 million, and these other flats I bought in a credit crunch went up by, and I didn't do much other than just buy the stuff.
Well, and do it up. Buy it and do it.
I put some kitchens in and stuff, but I think everyone should learn a bit about property, and it doesn't have to involve going to a hotel once a month to learn, which is why I've been building it all online.
Yeah, and I think the online education is the way to go, because I think this lockdown has certainly made me realize that we spent so much time traveling when really we didn't have to. I mean, it's lovely to network and to meet people face to face. And of course, that is something that I miss. But from the point of view of learning and education, actually online is often better.
I'll tell you what it reminds me of. So a lot of what I do now ties back to what I used to do. And the business I started when I was in my 20s that used to trace the missing heirs to inheritance.
Yes.
That got whacked by websites like ancestry.com. And we used to search all these microfiche to find all the births and the marriages and the deaths. We used to pull, they're all split into quarters in alphabetical order. And you flick through and you find the piece of plastic that's got 100 pages on it, and you pull it out and you put it into the microfiche reader, and then you scroll down and you find it. It was really inefficient, and it's no wonder we made loads of money by hiring really smart graduates and ex-cops and stuff. But when ancestry.com came along and digitized the whole lot, which I was actually also doing privately for my own team,
yes,
that changed everything. And there's nothing that's so scientific about investing in property and fixing it up that you have to travel to a hotel once a month to learn it. You can just be told in a module, and if you can make that so efficient for your clients and give them the answers, and like your job becomes making it as simple as it possibly can be, and then you're into a different sort of competition. And I didn't see anyone competing like that yet with property. I saw a lot of fluff.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it is that to a certain extent property is simple, but it is risky if you get it wrong, isn't it? So it's important to get the balance right between making it easy for people to understand, but also making them understand that there are risks and where do the risks lie.
Yeah, and it's competitive. Like, you need to be able to outperform the other people who are trying to do it, and you need to know how they're going to screw up so that you can avoid that.
It's like any business.
Yeah. What are the main things we're going to talk about tonight, Jane? I'm intrigued because we're already talking about property and we're not meant to.
I know, that's right. Yeah. We'll get off that subject, that boring subject that we always talk about. Yeah. So we are going to talk. Okay, right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to go back to your business kin. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is the one that we were talking about because you've got a couple of funny stories. So Matt, just tell us about this business and why did you decide to launch a business that matched heirs with their missing millions?
So
Where did that idea from?
all through my 20s, I wanted to start my own business, and I didn't really have much money, and I didn't have any track record, and I didn't really have any meaningful experience, and I didn't know if anyone was going to back me, and I didn't know what the hell to do. And every now and then in my 20s, I'd see someone making a break for it and starting his own business, and I'd be immediately on their case, like, has he done that? What's he done? How's he doing it? How much is it going to cost? But things for me actually really ramped up in 2003. I've tragically lost my dad, which is, it's probably not a story for now, but my father was killed in an accident. And I decided that life was far too short. And my dad had always said, if you want to make lots of money and be successful, don't get a well-paid job because you'll never leave it.
Right.
And my dad was a pilot. He was a British Airways pilot. So he wasn't like me, like wanted to start his own business and all the rest of it. He just wanted to fly planes.
Yes.
But after his accident, he was only 52 when he died. And I thought, I just saw how fragile life was and how quickly it can go.
Yes.
I'm one of 4 boys. 2 of my brothers took it really badly and were pretty badly cut up about it. And one of my other brothers and I kind of seemed to handle it a bit better. But I just got this ferocious fire in my belly, and I grieved for well, not a long period of time. I was heartbroken about it, but for a couple of months I was grieving. But then I just really became determined to start my own business and become my own, just captain of my own destiny. And I just started writing lists of what people were doing. Like, could I do this? Could I do that? Could I do that? And one of my cousins explained what a cash flow statement should look like with all the months like that and your expenses across the top and your total expenses there and your income above that. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And then you can start putting in the volumes and the numbers. And once you start learning how to build a simple cash flow appraisal, you're like, okay, hold on a minute. Like, what would work and what would be the obstacles and the startup costs and everything. So I just became really obsessed. Really obsessed.
You were bitten by the bug.
I don't know why I was so driven, but I think my older brother was always smarter than me, and it just really fucking annoyed me. And excuse my French. But I came up with a few options, and a good friend of mine worked for a business that used to trace these missing heirs. And she said, there's loads of money doing this. You should do what these guys do. She'd actually left and was doing something else. And long story short, we ended up starting the business together, and we were 50-50 partners. I'd have done it very differently if I did it again now.
Would you?
Yeah. So at the beginning, the government used to release this list of unclaimed inheritances at midnight on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And they used to say how much they thought. Basically, you used to get the date of death, the name of the person who died, the town in which they died, and they'd also estimate the value of the estate. And the big inheritances usually involved a property. The bigger ones involved a property in London. You'd obviously have to knock off any inheritance tax and whatever, but there'd always be like 3 cases that were about 300 grand, then 100 grand, and then they'd drop away fairly quickly. And we just used to go after the £50,000 unclaimed inheritances.
Yes. Track
down the heirs, and you'd get the missing heirs to sign a contract where you get a percentage of the inheritance. So for our first month, we were making money because I just found this opportunity, and then I just smashed it as hard as I could for 8 years.
Yeah, a fairly straightforward business model, really, isn't it, Matt?
Is it? I don't know. In principle, it was, but there was no barrier to entry.
No.
And there was competition, and we did a lot of phone bashing. I mean, we were on the phone to neighbours all day, every day, trying to find out information, and every call was a persuasion exercise.
Right.
We'd find heirs all over the world. Eventually, I had 25 ex-cops working for me. But if you got beaten, you got nothing.
Wow.
And so you couldn't get beaten.
Amazing, amazing. And before we started talking, Matt, you were telling us about your crazy ride down the M1 at how many miles an hour? Was it?
80 miles an hour I was driving down the motorway. Outrageous.
Well, it wasn't quite that, but anyway.
It was very quick. There were no other cars around.
Yeah, you've got to state it publicly, so we'll leave it at that, right? But anyway, so tell us the best story then from that time.
There's loads of good stories, but one of the biggest cases we ever did with the air hunting business called Kin. I woke up in the middle of the night by chance. My flatmate had come home, and I thought I'd slept in on a Thursday morning, was going to be late for work, which never happened, by the way. And because we were meant to be in the office like 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was just after midnight. It was half past midnight. I thought, oh, I'll fire up my laptop, which in those days used to take like 20 minutes, and I'll download the cases and see if there's anything big. And I downloaded all the cases, and we had this piece of software that would pull all the cases off the Treasury's website and give them to you, with the largest case at the top. And there was one on there which was £4 million, and they'd never advertised an unclaimed inheritance that large before. And the person who passed away had passed away in London, and the name was a reasonable name. It wasn't like Jones or Davies, which would be really difficult. It was what I can't remember what the surname was, I tell you. It's actually on the Daily Mail's website, which I've got open on another page here. But anyway, I got in my car and I drove to the office, and I started looking up the marriages and looking up the births, and I found her parents' marriage, and then I did this long birth search, and for 10 years there were no sign of any brothers and sisters. Okay. And then suddenly these two brothers popped up in the New Forest, but she'd been born in Cheshire, and I was like, oh God, I don't know if they're brothers or not. So I went back to the marriage records to try and find their parents getting married, which I couldn't. So I therefore deduced, like, well, I can't find their parents getting married, so they must just be like much younger brothers, even though it looks a bit unusual. And to cut a long story short, I couldn't find one of them. It turned out he lived on a boat in Milwaukee, but I did find another. I found one of the other brothers, and he was on the Isle of Wight. Oh. And I figured if I could get to his house before any of the others could even phone him, I might get a contract. So I always had some blank contracts with me, and some of them were at 5% of the inheritance, 10%, 15%, 20, and 25. Okay. And so I grabbed the whole selection because I didn't know what the story was going to be. And it turned out this guy had never known his long lost sister, and he hadn't seen her in all his life. She'd gone off and left home at 16 and worked as a model and married a couple of very wealthy guys and died. She'd left everything in her will to her husband, who'd already passed away, and therefore her family were potentially going to inherit this £4 million, which actually turned out to be 9.8 million quid. Wow. That's beautiful for them. Yeah. But then it wasn't easy to find him, and I had to drive very fast to get the boat to the Isle of Wight, and I managed to get there on a boat, and then I don't know. There's so many parts of this story I don't know where to go to first. But the long story short was there was absolutely no emotional connection. There was always a chance that a will would turn up and he wouldn't inherit anything anyway. And we'd have to put together the report and put a claim in for him and represent him and everything. And I thought, if I hand this guy the 5% contract, I'm going to regret that for the rest of my life. So I pulled out the 25, and as I passed it to him, he took it and he goes, "Okie doke, and where do I sign?" And as I passed the pen, my hand was shaking. And he goes, "I'm just going to sleep on this one, I think." I was like, "Absolutely fine. I've got an envelope for you. Here's the envelope." And the point of the story was the Daily Mail caught him up. They were right behind me. Not right behind me. It took him I was there first thing on Thursday morning, and I phoned the guy at 5 o'clock on Friday evening to make sure everything was all right. He goes, "Yeah, all fine. I'm going to sign. I've spoken to my brother. I'll put it in the post this weekend." And it must have been an hour later, the Daily Mail turned up, put a bottle of champagne in his hands and took photos and said, "You've inherited £4 million. You're rich. Here's a photo." And I spoke to him on the Monday. I said, "I saw you in the newspaper at the weekend. I guess my contract's not coming back." He goes, "No, sorry, Matt. I don't need any help." Oh. And I put him in touch with some solicitors that I knew, actually. That's how I know he ended up inheriting £9.8 million.
Really? Well, that's quite a story, really, isn't it? It must have been pretty disappointing at the time, but did it ever come back that you'd made that effort? Did you ever stay in touch, or did he ever come back to you for anything?
Yeah, he did actually. I did speak to him again, partly because the relationship was good, and that's how I used to sell.
Yeah,
Like, he said to me, like, I need to know who it is that's died. And I said, well, I obviously can't tell you who it is that's died, because otherwise there's no point in me doing what I do, and I do what I do in good faith. And you've
yeah,
got a 14-day cooling off period. It's all in the terms, and that's how we do what we do. And I think that's why we were successful as well, because we didn't try and bullshit people into signing contracts that they might not want to sign.
yes,
There were other contracts I negotiated that were worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, and I didn't do it by lying. In fact, I did it by being honest and then explaining when I couldn't answer questions that would compromise my position. And people respected that. I mean, it did mean that we didn't necessarily win every contract, but it also meant that we negotiated contracts away from other people that were trying.
something happened there for a moment, but anyway.
I thought you were going to cut me off because my stories are rubbish.
But integrity is really, really important, and that's always a quality that I've associated with you. And I think if you treat people well, and if you're honest and straightforward with them, then you are always going to go further in business than if you try and just shaft somebody or lie, basically. And
Yeah. I think the best thing you can do in any sort of sales is, or the worst thing you can do is sound like a salesperson. So all these people that phone up and they're like, hello, can I speak to Mr. Siddell? And then launch into their pitch, just wasting leads and burning through opportunities.
definitely.
You need to just talk to people and strike up a conversation. But you also need to believe in what you're doing. If you don't believe in it, you're never going to be able to sell it, are you?
No, definitely not. So, Matt, let's get on to the subject of brand, because this is something, again, that we were talking about today. And what I was saying to you earlier is that I actually put a post on LinkedIn this morning about naming. And it's very unusual in property to have some very imaginative names. And this is something that you've obviously come up with. In fact, all of your businesses, they've all had very unusual and interesting names, which of course I believe are, if you can evoke some kind of emotion with it, with a name, then your brand is more interesting and more mysterious than if it just does what it says on the tin. And that was my post this morning. And so I'd love to find out about your thoughts around naming and how you came up with these unusual and quite evocative names like Candor and Tropolis and so on. Where did you get the inspiration for those names from?
I think the best name so far has been Kin.
Mhm.
Although when we started, Kin was Kin UK Limited, and we called ourselves Kin UK Limited, and our domain name was kinuk.com, which actually spells Kinnock,
Okay.
which sounds a lot like the politician. But at the beginning, brand wasn't important to us. At the beginning, what was important was, can we make money doing this? And have I left a well-paid job for a good reason? And we actually did £300,000 worth of contracts.
Right.
And then we managed to find the people who owned the domain name kin.co.uk. And I went in using a Hotmail email address and paid them not very much money for it. And we started using that. And then we started to build a brand. Part of the reason I think the brand was important was because we were approaching people cold. They had no idea who we were. We needed the brand to be like a trustworthy brand. But also, if you're going to build a team, they need to want to work for the brand. Your brand's got to have something about it to attract good people into the business. And I think that's really important. But most of the time, I've just been trying to make sure that I've come up with some name that's unique so that I can protect it in some way and give myself a bit of space to build a reputation. It's not easy though, is it? Have you tried to name anything recently? It takes bloody ages now.
Yeah, so I'm kind of big on names. So I've come up with lots of names for my businesses and my events. So I had a mindset event called Love the Mojo, which is a name I'm still quite fond of actually. And then obviously the Smart Connector is my business now. Then my property business was Invest Develop Capital Partners, which I quite liked, but I think it led people to think it was much sort of bigger than it really was, because it was really only just a little property business. But anyway, that was quite fun. And just trying to think. I mean, I'm just constantly coming up with names, so I really like it. But I'm interested to know where you got the name Tropolis from, because to me it conjures up the Acropolis. It almost has a classicism about it. Was that your intention?
It's a shortened version of metropolis, which stands for the capital of a town or a region. And I thought it had sort of property type connotations, but it's essentially it's a made up word. It's a unique name.
Uh-huh.
There is no other Tropolis out there, which meant
Yeah,
we could get a slightly better domain name and the rest of it. But I played around with a lot of names. There were a lot of names I wanted to use for
really.
for the next business. Yeah, loads of them. I went back and forth and doing all sorts of searches. I'd write a long list,
Yeah.
probably in a spreadsheet, and I would have various tabs open so I could search, just do a Google search, or I could search company's house, or obviously the trademarks register. And even when I thought I had something that looked like it was clear on all of that, and I'd be like ferociously holding down command and clicking. So it right clicks and opens on a new tab, click, and just look and look and look. And I think, and then you play and you swap a letter around, and then you see how it actually looks on a font in front of you on the screen. Because some words just look crap, and you don't want a word that looks crap. It's got to look good.
Yeah.
And eventually, I must have tried like hundreds of names, and Tropolis was sitting there, and I thought, oh, this one looks clear, and this one looks like I can use it. Candor was slightly different, because candor is a different spelling of the word candor, as in to be totally honest and frank with people, and that's really does represent the club's values, because the property industry, and I think everyone would agree with this, has more than its fair share of hyperbole and BS. And for me, it was really important just to cut through all that, because unless you make a real effort to cut through it, you kind of actually just encourage it,
Yes.
and you don't want to be doing that. But yeah, I hope people don't think that I try too hard with the names, but I do think it's important to build a brand. I think it really helps to attract good people into your business. For obvious reasons, they're going to have that on their email address and maybe on their business cards and what have you. But I mean, you're much more of an expert at all this than I am. I mean, the brands speak of your values and the fonts that you use and their colors and the tone and everything you do. It all comes across, doesn't it?
Yes, and because we have been talking prior to this interview, one of the things that we were talking about is that actually I saw a comment by somebody who is quite a well-known property developer, and it was really saying there is no place for brand in property. Property is not about brand, and
Try then tell that to Tony Pidgley, who runs Barclay Homes. I don't really agree with you.
I know, but he was saying it's just fluffy stuff. It's people putting fluff and spin on something that is really just a very basic kind of service. It's like, well, no, I completely disagree, because brand is not just about a visual identity or about a name. Of course, those are manifestations or representations of your brand, but they're also very much about your behavior as an organization.
Yeah,
And that is an important part of your brand, your customer experience. You, obviously, as a leader, and because you are a founder of your businesses, the way that you, for example, prioritize speaking up, telling the truth, no fluff, giving value first, all of those things that people associate with you are as much a part of your brand as the name or the visual identity
yeah.
or the website, or really the glossy brochure or anything else that is just a manifestation of the brand. So I think for me, one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you for this strand is because you are quite unusual, I think, amongst the property community for really taking this seriously and really having something that is consistent all the way through. I think in terms of an unusual but quite compelling name and a nice visual identity, and obviously there's you.
Yeah, I didn't realize that people. I never really took it that seriously, but a couple of people have said it, and maybe I am quite good at making stuff look nice and all the rest of it. But it's a bit of a cop-out, really, because all that really matters when you've got a business, well, the number one thing that matters is making money. If you can't make money, if you can't monetize what you're doing, you'll never scale and you'll never grow. But if you can make money and build the brand, all the rest of it, and all that helps, then that's great. But the guy that said that brand's not important, presumably it just wasn't important to him, because it obviously didn't appear on his priorities.
Well, actually, I said to him, I won't mention his name here, but I did say to him, actually, I think you've got quite a good brand. It's just not a particularly visual brand. And I mean, his developments were lovely. I mean, he did really, really nice work. But I don't know. I just think maybe he liked to be controversial. So
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But even when I was buying the houses in Reading, and I built a portfolio of about 78 tenants, and it took me a couple of years, which is pretty quick, really, to find all the right properties and refurbish them and put the tenants in there and set it all up. But I was also doing some stuff in London at the time. But that was the first time we used Opulen as a brand, and we did go to great lengths to try and make sure that our product was superior and that there was lots of attention to detail. And I actually just went through all this on one of the modules for Tropolis, and was explaining to everyone, like, in this picture, all you see is a nice room. But when I look at this picture, that light shade, if you look in the mirror, you can see that the seam is on the back of that light shade. And that's for a reason, because even when you get down to the detail of how you take your photos, all those little differences add up to the overall effect of something very, very nice. And occasionally people would mention my business in Reading to me without knowing that it was me that owned that business. I'd say to them, like, I've been investing in Reading for a few years, and this is what I've been doing. They say, there's another company in Reading that does that called Opulen. Have you come across them? I was like, yeah, that is my business. So we built up a reputation for having a good product, and putting the name on it as well, I think really helped. And inevitably everybody then, sets their sights on what you do, and they're like, right, I'm going to do exactly what that guy does, and I'm going to put a TV on the wall. And more of that started happening. It's like, I do a little website, someone else does a little website, I'm going to do this, someone else does that. I'm putting floor plans on my adverts, everyone else putting floor plans on their adverts. And it's relentless. And what you have to do is not let that exhaust you, just accept that that's how it is. And you just got to keep staying ahead of the crowd and innovating and evolving.
Yeah, definitely. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And if people are coming up behind you and doing what you do, then it is a sign that you're doing something right. And as you said, you just have to keep on growing, don't you?
Yes, but you've touched a nerve there. You're right. Imitation is a great form of flattery, but you can never be truly passionate about copying what someone else does. Like, I've always looked at what other people do, and you can't help noticing when someone does something good. It's a bit like if someone walks down the street and they're incredibly good looking. It's a fact, they're remarkably good looking. Or if someone's done a stunning development, or if someone's got an amazing brand, or if something's just beautiful in its simplicity, you will notice those things because they stand out. But don't just try and rip off someone else's business, because you won't get it all right. And the key parts that are there behind the scenes, you'll totally miss out on them. The one biggest part that will be missing is the true passion and drive that comes from building your own thing in your own way and attracting your own people to what it is you're doing.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, Matt.
Which is why my event in Knightsbridge was different, and which is why my event in Knightsbridge worked better than anyone else's at the time, if I can brag.
Definitely. And really, I think what you're saying is that entrepreneurship, or good entrepreneurship, is also a creative endeavor. I certainly feel that innovation, they call it innovation, but really coming up with new ideas and doing them in your own unique way, I think, is what makes a business exciting for many people. And not just the founders, the people that are in the business, or I mean any of the stakeholders, the clients or the customers, or the tenants. People pick up on that energy, don't they?
Definitely. And it can be good energy and it can be bad energy, but people will pick up on it. And preferably you want to be giving off some good energy, because otherwise you're going to attract some really miserable people.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting subject, because I think the people that are at the head or the helm of any organization are really the ones that set the tone for that organization. As you said, there's good and bad energy, but I think this issue of ethics always comes through for me. And I think what happens is people's values and their ethics become amplified. I've noticed this time and time again.
Yeah.
So this just it kind of ripples down throughout an organization, and then it becomes part of the brand. So if you say a brand lacks integrity, it's often because the organization itself lacks integrity, because the people at the top lack integrity. And those are the people, I would say, those are not my tribe. My tribe are the people who are different and who, they have got values, and their values ripple out through the market and down through the business.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say that my values are more important than anyone else's. I wouldn't say that for a minute. And for some people, their business might be just about making money, and integrity comes way down the list. And there'll be clients for them, and there'll be clients for me. But I think you've got to embrace the fact that other people have got different values from you, and you're right. Build your own tribe, but your team will be a reflection of what is and isn't allowed within your organization. And if there's one thing I would say, actually, is that we live in such a transparent world these days that you may as well just be true to your values, because you won't be able to fake it for very long. And if taking loads of money off everyone is more important to you than doing the right thing by them, then just crack on with it and don't make any apology for it. Not that that's my MO. My MO is that I'm giving 15% of the profits from one of my businesses to charity, just to prove that it's not about making loads of money out of everyone.
That's really, really good, and that's powerful, because so many people, they get rich and then they just pull up the shutters and they don't care about other people. So I think that's amazing. Which charity did you give your profits to?
So since I started the club, Candor, we've pledged 15% of our profits to charity. I've supported the 88 bikes since the very beginning. Yeah. So when I launched it, the whole thing, I actually launched it off nothing, which is remarkable as well, because whenever I hear all these people talking about start a business with no money, I was like, oh, what a load of rubbish. But actually, I've done it. And I'm thinking, well, I've actually done it, so maybe it can be done. But I launched the club, and there was an instant profit, and I donated some to this charity that I'd already been supporting. So it gives bikes to normally victims of they're human trafficking victims. They've normally been forced into the sex trade. And I even flew to Cambodia to give out, we gave out like 350 bikes in a week via orphanages and schools and other local charities. So we supported them for a long time. But then when the lockdown kicked off, I was actually really worried about my business, because I was worried about all my clients' businesses. I thought if half my clients get really badly walloped by this, then we're going to get carried out. So I think we've been donating, like, on a standing order, $1,000 a month, and I paused that. And then I realized that I didn't want to be living in fear during the lockdown, and that rather than allowing my flight mode to kick in, I wanted to engage my fight mode. And I upped the ante, and I said, right, we've always done 15%. I even actually showed it to all our clients. I was like, don't bail out on the club now, because I've said from day one, we'll give 15% to charity, and we've done that. And here's the accounts. And the months where you see us giving more is us sponsoring your kids, because you've asked us to. And the club is not expensive. We will get through this, but stick with us. And I'm going to up the ante and give 25% of our profits to charity during the lockdown. So we've been donating to PPE via one of the members of the club, and one or two other people who've asked for donations and stuff. But if you actually have the balls to do it, you don't have to do it with your entire business, because it might be a ridiculously large amount of money. But if you've got the balls to start doing it, it can be really powerful, because people ask you to, will you sponsor me? And you're like, yeah, I'll sponsor you. I gave like 300 quid to one guy's charity before you even joined the club. I said, I'm not giving you this so you join the club, because I know you're going to join the club anyway, but I've given you this because you've told me 100% of this money will go to this charity.
Oh, That's so nice. And you know, sometimes people outside of property, they have this idea that property investors or developers were just all greedy rich bastards.
They are mostly.
Okay, but not all of them.
No, not all of them. Not
Yeah,
all of them,
that's
but a lot of them.
yeah, true, true.
Yeah.
So what's the worst thing that you've seen over the last few years? What's the share something that perhaps.
Ponzi's. I really, if you want to get my back up and really boil the Ponzi's, I fucking hate them.
Okay, so let's tell people, because on the group, not everybody is in property, so they don't really understand what a Ponzi is or
Yeah.
Ponzi in property is. So would you like to explain, Matt?
Thousands of people every year don't realise that they're putting their money into a Ponzi because it doesn't look like a Ponzi. Ponzi's don't look like Ponzi's.
No.
You just find out later that you've given your money to something and you never had a chance of getting it back. But they'll be all tagged up with logos that give it credibility. They'll probably have their lawyer's logo on there, and maybe they'll have Ernst & Young's logo on there, or Deloitte's logo on there, or PwC's logo on there, and it will all look really credible. And they'll talk about fixed return, and the return might be fairly sensible. It's probably a very sensible return. It doesn't sound very risky, and the reason it doesn't sound very risky is because if they put the real return on there, you wouldn't go anywhere near it because it would sound too risky. So, and they'll say that there's security and there's a security trustee and it's got a charge and all the rest of it. But you're putting your money into something and you haven't got a chance of seeing it again. And I can't believe how many of these things are out there. But I've just over the last 3 years, I've just seen more and more of them pop up.
Yeah.
It's all these mini bonds. They're really bad news. They're bad news for the developers because these people can outbid anybody because they haven't got to make a profit. They're really bad news for the investors because they give 100 grand or 50 grand or 200 grand and they think they're getting income now because they're getting 10% per annum or 8% per annum, or it might be anything from 7% to 15%. But they won't see their money again. It goes like all these London Capital and Finance and all the rest. There's loads of them. And every now and then I have to speak to one of these fucking assholes and I can't keep my mouth shut. And then they have to have a go at me. And I'm like, oh God, I've got into another fight with a crook.
They are crooks. And of course, I've seen
crooks.
What happens is the money goes in and the next thing they're driving around in a McLaren or a Ferrari or something because they just, the money goes in and then off they go to the car showroom or the dealership or whatever. And
yeah,
it happens, doesn't it?
It does happen. But the one thing I've gotten better at in the last 12 months is I won't invest my energy into those issues. I keep, there's nearly 200 clients in my club that pay us to keep them safe or to help promote them or to speak at our events and what have you. And they're all, they're all decent people running businesses or investing lots of money. And part of the benefit is that the club's called Candor, for goodness sake. It's called Candor because I couldn't call it No Bullshit. I didn't think it was going to be a very good name. But we see this stuff. I see it too early as well. I now spot the wrong uns, the crooks and the Ponzi's and all the rest of it. I spot it way before other people do. And they don't thank you for it early on. You have to keep your mouth shut and you have to wait for it to come out in the wash. And then they realize that, Little Miss Lovely has been ripping everyone off all along, or that this guy they thought was amazing is just spunking everyone's cash. But if you ask me if there's what's the worst thing I've seen, is that because they're taking people's life savings and they're spunking it on a good time, and they're spunking it at a shot of becoming successful that they never had in the first place because they haven't got the business acumen to run a profitable business. So look, there's people popping up on here commenting like, "Me too, Matt." Yeah.
Sadly, I've seen a lot of it too, and that's probably a story for another day.
It is, because you've just made me break one of my golden rules, which is to stop talking about Ponzi's because it's bad energy. It's bad energy. I'd rather talk about branding.
I I know. So we haven't had any comments, and I'm not sure what's happened. Whether we've had an issue with the chat function, because I know that people were really excited about tonight, and I'm sure what's going to happen, Matt, is we're gonna fix this, and then we're going to see this whole list of questions that we haven't answered. I don't know if you've. Can
I've
you?
just seen the first question pop up on there. If everyone can hear us, can you just say hello in the chats and let us know that that you're there? You had some other. What were the other questions you were going to ask me about? The branding and the naming.
Yeah, the branding, the naming, and yeah, I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground, really, Matt. So let's just say, what advice would you give anybody that, because you have got a property investment platform, you're training on this now, and what advice would you give somebody who's really interested in becoming a property developer or investor? Where would you say is the best place to start?
I really need to get better at answering these questions because I'm going to get asked them a lot. But everybody's got different situations, different circumstances, right? So there's one guy who's just joined Tropolis and he's got 2 million quid.
Yes.
Versus the guy who's got like a 70 grand a year job, or the guy who's got a 50 grand a year job. They're just in different places and they're in different positions. So, if you've got loads of money, go out and buy something, leave the banks out of the equation, don't work with any banks, and get a builder on site and see if you can manage a builder. But you've got to start gaining experience and you've got to pick your entry point. What I wouldn't recommend you do is go out and get as much debt as you possibly can and get everybody involved as quickly as you can and take loads of planning risk and try and become Nick Candy overnight, because you'll get carried out. You'll be like a flash in the pan on Facebook.
Yes, exactly. And I've seen that as well. So if you want to get started in property, and whether you have a lot of money and you just haven't dabbled in property or engaged with it up until now, or if you're just a beginner, perhaps you're working in a job and you're thinking, how can I secure my future?
Yeah.
Actually acquire some assets that eventually I could pass on to the next generation.
Yeah.
Then the message is, don't do it alone.
No.
Start off by engaging with Matt's platform, which is Tropolis. Or if you want to take it a step further, just tell me if I'm saying the right thing. Join Candor
Well, Candor's a bit different like that. Just because someone will give us their credit card details doesn't mean we'll take their money. It's exclusively for people who are actively doing deals above £1 million.
Okay, right.
But, the benefit of Tropolis is you don't have to travel anywhere to join it. Let me give you an example. When we first started Tropolis, I've got a guy in New York who builds hospitals because he's vice president of construction for a healthcare business.
Yes.
And the next hospital he builds is $600 million, but he doesn't know how to do his own deals with his friends and family. So he's joined Tropolis because that's part of what we help people work out how to do. There's all sorts of different ways. It depends how much work you want to do and how much work you don't want to do. When I started, I bought a flat with my brother. We tried to improve it and make some money, and we didn't. My brother ended up holding it for a long period of time, and it went. I think we paid £205,000 for it, and now it's worth like 750 grand.
Wow.
But he's held it for 18 years. And then the second stuff I bought flats in the middle of the credit crunch. I was quite happy running my business and paying myself a salary, and the business was making money and building up value on its balance sheet. But a friend of mine was doing a deal on 12 flats that Barrett couldn't sell in the middle of the credit crunch, and I broke all the rules. You're not supposed to buy new build, but this was distressed, and it was. I'll just drop my pen. This was distressed, and it was very cheap. And my friend was buying one. I thought, right, well, if he's buying one, it must be all right. So I'll follow him into the deal. And everyone told me on the way into the deal that I was going to lose all my money. So all my friends that worked in the city, all my friends that had property, they all said, don't buy any property now. You're mad. You'll lose all your money. And I couldn't find anyone that said it was a good idea. And I've said this so many times, but I figured that confidence in property couldn't be any lower. Therefore, prices couldn't be any cheaper. And I didn't just buy one. I bought two. And as I went back to buy a second one, they were all like, oh, you might actually be right on this. And when you look back at the graphs, February 2009 was the very bottom of the market.
Right.
But then in the next breath, I would caution you, like, don't, just because you get it right once, don't get too confident, because it will, property has a way of teaching you lessons when you get a little bit too comfortable. You know, inevitably you'll hire a builder who's lousy, or you'll buy something you shouldn't have bought, or you'll take a punt on something that goes wrong. And those are the ones you always learn more when things go wrong than you learn when things go right.
Exactly. And the thing is, we all make mistakes, don't we? We all get things wrong, and as you said, that those are also our biggest learning opportunities, aren't they?
Yeah. If there's half a dozen things you can improve to increase your performance, it might be the way you recruit people, or it might be your brand, or it might be your systems or your tools, or it might be the way that you handle stress, or it might be the way that you handle failure. If there's one thing I could have seriously improved, when I had to shut down Kin was a massive success. There was like £4 million there when I closed it, but I cried my eyes out and thought the whole world had ended. And really, I should have just gone off to the pub and had a pint and be like, right, what should we do with this £4 million? But I didn't. It was heartbreaking. I was like, geez, I should have. Someone should have come along and give me a kick up the arse. But like, what I'm saying is, I should have failed faster and failed better and bounced back quicker and bounced back faster, because I wasted time.
Right. And do you think maybe that was a confidence thing? Just experience, confidence and experience.
Yes, I guess it's a bit like getting dumped the first time. The first time you get dumped, you know, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? But mind you, I doubt you've ever been dumped. You're far too good looking. But when you look like me, you get dumped all the time. And
I've been
right, on to the next one.
That's right, yeah. Okay. Well, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here tonight. It's been such a lovely interview. And as I said, I don't know what's happened to the chat, but I know that somebody will have been asking questions. So maybe we'll just have to answer them afterwards.
I bet they're all on my Facebook Live.
Probably, yeah. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, but before we go, tell everybody what happened with the police today. We did.
They finally caught up with me.
Yeah, they caught up with you. So come on, Matt. What did you do?
Must have been my Ponzi. Oh no, you don't get arrested for running a Ponzi. It's totally legal. No, oops. It was my neighbour. It was my neighbour. I had to jump out. All these police arrived outside. There was like 3 police cars and there was at least 10 police officers, and they were going to kick her door down. But I knew she was in there. She doesn't have any family and she needs some help. So I ran round. So
not a cannabis farm next door?
No, not on this occasion. Not in this neighbourhood.
No, Wimbledon. No. Not many cannabis farms or
no. The funny thing was, the police couldn't jump over the wall. The other neighbour was there, and they were laughing because the cops couldn't get over the wall. I had to do it for them. But anyway, she's okay. She's okay now.
Yeah, that's good news. All right then. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Matt. It's been great to have you here again, and thank you very much if you listened in. This is going to go out on the YouTube channel and also on the Smart Connected podcast as well.
What? You're going to publish it? I'd have cleaned up my language.
Yeah. Oh no, don't worry about that. Well, we can edit it out if you want. But
it's just going to be like one long bleep, though. It'll be like when Reza Merchant came and spoke at my event in Knightsbridge.
Do bleeps. I'll speak to the make it quite fun, actually, because people will be guessing what you're saying.
You could put fake bleeps in there as well to make me look bad.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, and see you soon.
Cheers. Take care. See you later.